Hi, you're listening to a Pod for Good Media Network podcast. We are a network that provides podcasting production services and a supportive community in which podcasters can thrive. If you're a podcaster local in the Tulsa area, we would love to have your show on the network. If you are interested in starting one, we would love to help you get started. Find us online at podforgoodmedia.com and fill out our Pod With Us form. Happy podcasting. Welcome to another episode of Pod for Good, a podcast where we learn from those doing good in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the world, why they care, what we can do, and most importantly, what you, the listeners, can do. Pod for Good is produced and edited by Pod for Good Media. So if you like how we sound and are thinking about starting a podcast, reach out to me. I am easy to find. Pod for Good can be found anywhere you get your podcasts. So if you enjoy what we do, please make sure to subscribe and share this episode on social media. And, maybe even give us a review, only if it's going to be 5 stars. If you have anything else to say, keep it to yourself. I am, as always, your chief philanthropod and class clown for sound dampening your windows if you're building something next to the train tracks, Jesse Ulrich.
And I'm your vice admiral philanthropod and class clown for seed money for local entrepreneurs, Chris Miller.
In this episode, we're talking with Devon Laney, president and CEO of 36 Degrees North /Gradient.
We talked to Devon about the $1 billion impact of 36 Degrees North, their rebrand to Gradients, their amazing new space, and we briefly gloat about our Sooners win over his Tide.
Enjoy the episode. Devon, welcome to Pod for Good. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
So before we get into 36 Degrees North and Gradient and all that good, interesting stuff that you're working on, we're recording this episode on November 25th, and 2 days ago, our alma mater, Chris and I's, University of Oklahoma, played your alma mater, the University of Alabama, in Norman. And I've now discovered you were there. And I would first like to ask you, how are you feeling today?
Well, this podcast is over, so we can start there. Thanks a lot for bringing that up. No, I will say, listen, I married an OU grad. Mm-hmm. And so I had said last year when they announced the schedule, I said, look, the ride to the game is going to be great. We're both going to have a really good time. The ride home from the game, somebody's not going to be happy. I assumed it would be her unhappy on the ride home. Ended up not being the case. Yeah, I'll say though, such a great place for a football game, such a beautiful campus, and just have such a good time down there. And we had we took a picture before the game started, and there was a beautiful sunset. Mm-hmm. And I sent it to my family, and they joked and said, "Well, that was probably the only time Saturday you were smiling." Then from that point forward, there was no more smiles. Yeah. But no, gosh, you guys whipped us. There's just no way around it.
Yeah, I'm still emotionally confused by the game. I still don't know how to feel. Like I still feel like we're somehow going to lose it. Somehow, it's been 2 days. Yeah. It's been a rough season.
The crazy thing is the defense has shown that it can do that to other teams. It's just the offense didn't do its job. Whether it was like we talked about South Carolina, where they had 3 turnovers in the first few minutes that all turned into touchdowns and never had a chance, or other teams where you hold them to 20 points. Which is great for some of the teams, they played, but then they couldn't do better than 13 points, So it was nice to see they forgot, let's try just running our strong quarterback up the middle for a while until they stop.
Well, I'll tell you, I felt watching the game there in person, I kept thinking, Alabama, we suddenly couldn't do either. we couldn't stop the run. Mm-hmm. And we couldn't run. And then when we threw the ball, we had 3 interceptions.
Yeah.
So we just couldn't. You guys just beat us. You just beat us. Well, hands down.
Yeah, it's one of those situations because it's actually the same strategy like the Giants used against the Patriots in the Super Bowl, which is limit the amount of possessions you give the other team.
Sure.
Yeah.
But the problem is if that strategy doesn't work, you're going to look terrible. It's just our strategy. We were actually able to run the ball for once. Yeah. Because if we tried to run the ball and failed, we just would keep giving Alabama chances to score, and you eventually would have.
Yeah. Well, the big thing was only turning it over once.
Yeah.
Not to make this too much of a football podcast.
Yeah. All right.
But that was, OU leads the country in fumbles.
You're right.
There were so many times would fumble either in really bad positions to where the other team could score quickly, or they finally have some momentum and fun, and just for whatever reason,
Yeah.
all came together and they
Yeah.
didn't fumble, didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not gonna throw interceptions if you barely throw the ball. So that was a good strategy.
Yeah,
That's
very
true.
good strategy.
Well, and I'll say this: in any consolation for myself I was talking to some friends afterwards
Yeah.
after the game, and I said, as much as I hate to lose games, I would much rather lose a game definitively like that, where then it be like a close, just whoever gets the ball last with 5 seconds and they score and it's over and you don't have a chance. This game was over. I mean, it was you guys beat us.
Yeah,
and there was no question at all. You beat us.
Yeah, and I feel like that's usually rare for an upset. Usually the upsets happen like at the last second, and there's or crazy play in like an overtime or whatever. But this was like it was a dominant performance throughout, and like I truly was not prepared for that. I've watched the highlight reel, like the 15-minute like highlight of the whole game, like 3 times already. It's a lot of runs.
I haven't watched it at all since then. I lived it, so it's enough. But thanks for bringing it up. I'll just say thank you. I appreciate that.
You were in too good of a mood when you walked in here. So, all right.
As much happiness as that brought to the state of Oklahoma. Let's talk about something that's even more impactful to the state.
Oh, nice pivot. Nice pivot. We're professionals. So you've been the executive director, right, of 36 Degrees North since 2019.
Correct. September.
And it opened in 2016.
Correct.
Right. So we're entering, what is that, 9 years of 36 Degrees North, and you are about to move into your new facility with your new name, which we'll get into in a minute. Just like to start us off, like from when you got here till now, how has what your vision of what 36 Degrees North is changed?
When I arrived in Tulsa and came to 36 Degrees North, number one, I was just really impressed by what had been established, right? The community that was there, the members that were there, the reputation that it had at the time. And I will say there was a desire and a real willingness in not only, I think, the membership and from a community perspective, but from a leadership and a support perspective that the organization could and should be a lot different in terms of how it could really help drive economic impact for the region beyond being just a co-working space. And that's not always, you go different places, and sometimes people are very happy with where they are and the organization is where it is, and they don't necessarily think about the opportunity to evolve the organization. But it was pretty clear early on that there was a desire and a hunger to evolve the organization into something greater that could really have a much larger impact for the community, for the region. And so that was really exciting to see. And one of the reasons that I chose to come was because I felt that when I visited, and I felt it and heard it when I talked with people. And I got the sense that there was this, people say things are percolating or they're bubbling up. You've got the, when I came to Tulsa in the summer of 2019, the first time, I got that sense from everyone I talked with that were members, that were in the community, that were partners of 36 Degrees North, that had been supporters. Everyone felt this urge or this desire to build and grow what the organization was and what it could do. And that was really exciting for me to see. And that's part of the reason that I came.
So I know, in case some of our listeners don't know what 36 Degrees North is, it is truly like it's a combination of a co-working space and like an incubator, right? It gives companies and organizations a place to start. And a lot of them have like outgrown and moved out of 36 Degrees North because they have too many employees or whatever. Right. And I've always liked that the mixture of the two. I've always found just very interesting the conversations you can have inside 36 Degrees North. There's some people there who are literally just there to do their remote job, and they get to talk to people who are starting like a brand new company. And those are two different energies, and it leads to really fun conversations that I've had.
Yeah, so. It's exactly right. And I think when 36 Degrees North was established initially, it was purely as a co-working space. There really wasn't a thought around remote work as a focus, or even really maybe incubator or accelerator, any of those, like none of the programming pieces. It was really just, let's just have a place for all of these people to gather, to come together, to be exposed to one another, to what's happening, to who's building a business, to who's growing their small business, to who has an idea for a business and is trying to figure out how to do that. And it was sort of that central gathering place for that. And then part of the evolution has been, how do we really focus on connecting people. We say that our job is to connect people so they can grow. And that could mean they are growing their networks. They're growing their idea into a business. They're growing their existing business into a much larger business. They're growing their startup. They're scaling. But people come there to connect with others, with resources, with infrastructure, and they're all doing it because they want to grow to the next level. And in some way, shape, or form, whether that is I'm a remote worker and I don't really know a lot of people in Tulsa, but I feel like I want to be around a community, so I want to grow my network of peers and other partners. Or I'm a startup and I want to grow my idea into a business and I need capital and resources and connections. Or I'm a existing small business and I want to grow my small business. And how do I do that? What are the tools and the resources and the partnerships and that I can tap into to help me be successful? And so at the end of the day, we really say, as simply as it can be, we exist to connect people so that they can grow. And that's part of that evolution of our organization away from being just purely a co-working space. And we've now layered in other programming pieces like a state certified incubator, like our programming boot camps, entrepreneurship boot camps, our great partnership with Tulsa Remote and all of the remote focused programming and resources that we provide. So really thinking about expanding and evolving beyond being just a space. There are a lot of places. You can go work at a lot of places, but you can connect and grow at 36 Degrees North because it's all of these things layered on top of just the space.
So what is the mix like between those different groups and different types of people that you serve?
Yeah, we've got about 3,500 members across all of our locations currently. And I would say within that, we have probably a third of those individuals are small business owners or freelancers or what I would call solo entrepreneurs. So they are a graphic designer or they are a freelance developer or they have a small business where they do consulting or they, whatever that small business is. They're 1 or 2 person groups. We have currently about 50 companies in our incubator program. And those companies are typically going to be like startup type companies. They're going to be technology or tech enabled companies. So the business doesn't have to be technology. The business can be, I'm delivering a service, but I deliver the service using technology, right? So it's technology enabled or technology adjacent. And we have like 50 companies in the incubator. They employ probably 350, maybe 400 people across those companies. And then we have a large swath of just remote workers, and not exclusively like what I would call non-Tulsa remote workers, people that are not from Tulsa, but also people that are local Tulsans that are remote workers that still looking for that same sense of community, same resources. They want to be able to plug into what's happening. They realize that you can be more productive with community around you. Maybe not all the time, not every day. Yeah. Being able to work wherever you want to work, but having those pieces of the community that you can tap into, that's a significant portion of our membership as well. So it really kind of crosses, right? And then we also have, a lot of folks that are members through their organizations. So we have tons of partners, over 75 partners, organizations and groups that we work with, and they have memberships. And so they come in depending on the programming or the resources, or if they are there to provide programming. We have a lot of memberships of people like that as well too. So it really is a great cross section, I think, of just the community as a whole. Yep. It's hard to say that we have just one group that is really the dominant group. I think everyone is there for the most part. There is some entrepreneurial slant. Even the remote workers may have a side hustle. They work for Microsoft as an example, right? They're a remote worker for Microsoft, but they also have a side hustle where they do this on the side. They do development on the side, or they do freelance this on the side. And so there is always an interest or a desire. And the great thing about having so many remote workers too is that for a lot of our startups or entrepreneurs that are building businesses, they've got a built-in community of people that have incredible knowledge and incredible skill sets that they can tap into as they are looking to build their businesses or connect with resources, it's built in. So it's a pretty diverse group. I will say it is different than if you walk into what I would say a traditional, just a straight up co-working space, like a WeWork, right? Or just a straight up co-working space that doesn't really do a lot of programming. There's no real focus. Those almost feel like libraries oftentimes because people are they're sitting at a desk and they use a conference room and that's it. And there's not a whole lot of dynamic around community, or there's no focus or intentionality around resources or programming or community. And those are the things that separate us and help differentiate us as an organization that is looking to connect people with fill in the blank, right? It's not just a place. It's much more than that place. And that's why we have such a diverse group of members.
Sure. So at some point in 2025, your new building is going to open. You're sort of merging of all your different locations. When I imagine you're also going to like officially start going by your new name, which we'll get into now because I have questions. So the new name of the organization is going to be Gradient, correct?
That's correct, yes.
First, before we get into sort of the new name of the new building, I want to ask, how many meetings did you have to sit into to come up with this new name?
Oh my gosh. I lost count. I'll tell you, Jesse, it is doing a branding is hard. It's really hard, period. A rebrand of an existing brand is even harder. And then you layer in the equity that a brand has built up over a number of years, since 2016 for us.
Right.
In the community, with stakeholders, with partners, reputation, all these things. You don't want to discard all of that goodwill, but you also need to think through and decide with how the organization has evolved, and with where the organization is going, and with who we serve and what our focus is. Does that brand represent that? And will it be the brand that carries us forward, right? Or will people always associate that brand and that identity with what it was originally, a co-working space? And we spent the better part of probably a year and a half, I would say 18 months, going through listening sessions, community sessions, stakeholder, listening, feedback, questions, to really think through that. And we set out with the goal of not that we must rebrand. Our goal was, let's go through the process of exploring, is this the right brand to carry us forward with the kind of organization that we are becoming? And if we get to the end of that question and it is, no, it's not, then we can begin the exploration of a new brand. But we started out with, let's just go through the process and see if we feel this is the right brand. And if it is, great, let's double down. We can refresh, we can do certain things. But if we get to the end of that and we determine it's not, then it gives us the ability to then think about what the brand could be to help guide us going forward and what we want to be. And so it was a long process. And I'll give a quick shout out. We worked with Labor Division here in Tulsa, and they were fantastic. They helped us and listened to us and really dug in and understood the organization that we are evolving and becoming, and then look nationally at peer organizations. Because we gave guidelines at the beginning and said, we want this to be unique, we want it to be authentic, and we want it to be elevated. And people to feel that it's elevated. And this will be the only Gradient like this in the country. And we like that. And the old name, 36 Degrees North, while a unique name in Tulsa, is the latitude of Tulsa. So that's what 36 Degrees North is. There are a lot of cities on the 36 Degrees North latitude. Nashville is one, and Nashville has a big conference, 3686, and there are a lot of co-working spaces around the country that were named after latitude lines, and so it was unique in a sense, but not really unique. And then we wanted something that could be unique, that was authentic, so that there's only one Capital Factory, it's in Austin. There's only one 1871. It's in Chicago. There's only one Innovation Depot. It's in Birmingham. There's only one Gradient. And it's in Tulsa. And we wanted that to be part of it. And we felt like it gave us after going through the process, it gave us essentially the clearance to say, you can think a little more broadly and think a little bit more impactfully about the organization and what it represents and where it's going long term, and giving us that sort of breadth and scope and clarity, and coming up with a new identity.
Was there, and you don't have to say, and we can cut this out if you don't want me to ask this, but was there a name that you liked that didn't get chosen? Like, did you have a favorite in this process?
Honestly, in all transparency, when Gradient was up there, it was instant. I mean, it was almost unanimous around the room. We went through so many names and so many iterations where you would see it and think, okay, let me sit on that one for a while and see how it feels. Let me see how that feels on Monday, right? When Gradient, and we saw what Gradient meant, like the definition of Gradient, and what we are doing as an organization, we were like, this is it.
Yeah.
This is it. And then it was going to be disappointment if we couldn't own the name or couldn't copyright, trademark, and we could, thankfully, but it was the clear favorite.
Can you explain that relationship, how the definition of the word fits with what your organization is
absolutely.
doing?
I'm going to read this because I'll get it wrong if I don't. But the definition of gradient is, it is a noun, and it says, in physics, it is an increase in the magnitude of a property observed in passing from one point to another. So truly, it means growth. It's how does magnitude change from one point to another point? And since we really are focused on growth, growth of Tulsa, growth of the economy, growth of individuals and businesses and entrepreneurs, it fit. It was the perfect fit for it. And it was also very unique and very welcoming. It felt very inclusive. It didn't feel like, you see a lot of these organizations like Capital Factory. Great name, but some people may think, well, that's just a place to go get capital. You know, if I'm not seeking capital, is that really a place for me? Or other places that may, in some ways, create some exclusivity or exclusions in the community. We felt that Gradient was such a welcoming, broad word that had meaning behind it, that aligned with our organization, that it would be just such a great fit for us. And we feel we're really excited, and the response has been really, really positive.
So in addition to the name change, how important is it to pull everything together into one building, get everything under one roof?
Oh my gosh, so important. I'll tell you that, Tulsa, this is not unique to Tulsa. I would say every community outside of the coasts, and probably Chicago, have this same issue, which is in an ecosystem where you are trying to support entrepreneurs, startup companies, you need capital providers, you need resources to partner. We don't have enough density of any of those things to allow for that to just interact organically, right? When I got to Tulsa in 2019, and I actually pulled together a grouping within like the first month or two of all of, like, I don't know if it was all, but it was a lot of like the startup companies in Tulsa. So I brought them all together in a room. Really, the point was for me to interact with them and hear from them what the status of the ecosystem was. I just assumed they all knew each other. I got them in the room, and it turned into most of them didn't know each other. And so because there was no density. There was no cohesive center of gravity for the ecosystem. So you had all these startups kind of spread out all over the place. They were not interacting. They were not aware of each other. They were not aware of all the resources. And you're not building on any kind of density or economies of scale that way. And by bringing them all together, suddenly they're like, oh my gosh, you're doing this. We are too. Oh my gosh, we're doing this. Oh my gosh, who did you use for this? And it became like a microcosm of an issue for the broader ecosystem, which was there was just not as much awareness. People didn't know what was happening. People weren't sure about where to go to find things and have resources. And the investors certainly didn't know about the companies. The resource providers probably didn't know about all the companies. And so it became clear that we needed to create density to facilitate those interactions, to encourage those interactions. The joke is my mom lived out in the Bay Area for 15 years or something. And she would always say, she'd move out here, you'll make a lot more money. And I would always say, well, I would gross more money, but I would net less money. But out there, the joke is you could throw a rock and you would hit a startup or a VC or probably both with one rock. That's unique to that part of the country, and maybe the East Coast too, New York, New Jersey. Here you can't, and so you have to create that density and bring all those things together. And it's been a challenge for us over the last few years with multiple locations, because not only is it difficult for us to try to program and have culture and make sure there's awareness among those locations, but it's difficult for the community because if I'm an entrepreneur, I don't necessarily know the difference between co-working, boot camp, workshop, accelerator, pre-accelerator, incubator, pre-incubator. I mean, they don't know.
Yeah.
They just know, hey, I have an idea and I need some help. Hey, I have a business. I want some resources. Hey, I'm a remote worker. Where do I get, right? And so by having multiple locations, you're automatically creating barriers, right? And you're creating accessibility issues because people, they go to one place and, oh, you know what? Actually, you should be in our incubator.
Mm-hmm.
This is not that. This is our co-working space. You need to go over there. Oh, well, this is not where the VCs are. They're over there. Or this is not our boot camp on entrepreneurship's at base camp, not camp two. It created a lot of challenges and barriers for a path that is already difficult for people. Mm-hmm. And so the thought was always, if we could bring all of these things together, bring all the resources, bring all of the communities together, bring all of the infrastructure and all the support systems, and create a true hub, a true nexus for all this activity, you're creating essentially a central entry point. So there's no confusion in the ecosystem. People don't need to worry about what stage they're in, what kind of business they have, what they're looking for. They just need to know that's where I start. If I go to that place, that's the front door, I can walk in there and I'll be able to find what I need. And that was always the goal for us. It was to create that centralized entry point for the community to know that's where I go, that's where I find what I need to find. And so the benefit is bringing all that together. It helps us from a structural and a programming standpoint, but it really helps the ecosystem and the community know that that's the starting point. That's where I go. I don't have to worry about, is it a fit for me or not? Just go.
Yeah.
And you'll find what you need there. And then our job becomes, how do we curate all those resources and curate the connections and the infrastructure so that when you get there, we can route you to the right resources and programs and partnerships. That's the goal.
So the new location is going to be on 12 North Cheyenne in the old Otasco building. My question, and my first question is, where are people supposed to park?
Yes.
Question number 2, have you, since you're redoing you're completely redoing the inside of the building.
Correct.
Have you made sure to put like a lot of extra like sound dampening on that one wall right by the where the train goes? That train is loud.
Yes. Yeah. Great questions. I'll start with the first.
All right.
So parking. So there are about 6 parking areas adjacent or immediately around. We have a map that we show everybody. I personally, we don't want to be in the parking business. And there are people that do that much better than we do. There's a very large surface lot right adjacent from us, which is where all of the Atlas school students park and people for Welltown, and it's a huge parking lot. And then right across the tracks from us, there's that parking deck too that a lot of people park in there as well too. We'll have some parking on site, not anywhere near like a 1-to-1 ratio, and then there's a lot of street parking right there in front of the building too. But I really don't think it's going to be that big of an issue. If you're coming downtown, parking, people know parking. There's just a lot of different options for parking. One thing we've done is make sure that we have bicycle ramps on the front and the back of the building, and we have secure bike storage, and we have showers. We have a lot of people that ride bikes or scooters, obviously. They're living and working downtown or in surrounding neighborhoods. They can literally ride into the building, right into the storage. It's secure storage, and then showers and that sort of thing. So we tried to make it accessible from that standpoint also. But so that's from an accessibility standpoint, that's important. The noise piece, I'm not going to lie, I was concerned. The trains are loud.
Yeah. And that's right where like the trains stop and like reverse and then go forward and go reverse.
It is. And you hear the little ding, ding, ding with the arms or whatever. And I've been in buildings around there that are, it's almost unusable because of the train noise.
We don't have to name names. We all know who the buildings are.
I will say, we as part of the architectural process and the engineering process, it's a historic building, and we used historic tax credits to help with the development. And so we could not change some of the sizes of the windows because we had to keep them as they were originally designed. But we spent a significant amount of money on the glass and the soundproofing and the temperature control of the glass. Still, I was nervous. I'm not going to lie. I was like a little concerned. I was giving a tour on Friday, and we were walking through the building, and we were on that side, the south side of the building that faces the train tracks. And I was on the second floor. We were in an office there with like a huge bank of windows. And I was standing looking, not out the windows, I was facing the people. They were looking at me so they could see out the windows. And I was talking to them and I said, we know sound may be a concern and we've put on all this glass. I said, but we know we don't really know, but we think we've also put in this white noise system and we've got these sound dampening, all these things. And I said, but we're just really unsure. And there was a guy on the tour and he said, I don't think you have anything to worry about. And I said, wow, great. I'm glad. Why do you say that? And he said, because there's a double-decker train backing up right outside your window, and we couldn't hear a thing. And so I turned and looked, and he was right. There was a double-decker train, and it was doing what you said, backing up, pulling up, backing up. And I thought, okay, well then, good job. Money well spent on the sound, right?
Nice.
And I think the other thing that helps us too is that unlike some of those other buildings around, actually all the buildings around us that are all built on street level, and they're all brick. We are poured concrete building, and the walls are probably about 18 inches thick.
Okay.
There we go.
And we're not on street level, so we don't feel the vibration from the street level. And because the walls are so thick, and we spent that money on the glass, we don't. So far, and I've now been there now and seen the trains go by. Yeah, you don't really hear anything, which is great. Now, if you go outside, you're going to hear it.
Yeah, sure.
But in the offices so far, we haven't noticed an issue.
Yeah.
Excellent.
In the spaces.
Excellent. That was really my biggest concern when I saw what you were building. I was like, it's going to be so loud.
It's going to be loud. Well, we hope it is loud, but we hope it is with activity. We hope there's a lot of activity, and we've put in all of we have speakers throughout the building, so we can have white noise, ambient noise, music, whatever throughout the space.
And Jesse, I'm surprised you haven't asked if they've built a podcast.
Oh, they have. They are.
We actually told Jesse there's going to be a podcast and content studio in the building.
I'm very excited to see it once it's done.
We are excited about it. We're partnering with some folks to help us outfit that and make it really usable and add some production services as well. So we're really, really excited. We've always wanted that. We just haven't had the ability to have it.
Yeah.
And that's part, I will say this too. That's part of what makes this so great is that our other locations, which have been great, they've been great, but they were always going into an existing building that was already built out. And so we were trying to sort of make it work based on the limitations of the building we were in. Right. Because this building had been vacant for, I don't know, a long time, 30 years, 40 years, whatever. And we literally just had the shell of a building. We could be very intentional and very purposeful in designing and building out the space so that it accommodates all of our programming, all of the uses, everything. We thought about adjacency, where things were, how it was going to work, what kinds of rooms, where the phone booths were going to go, and very intentional so that it could serve the members well, serve our purpose well. And we had that ability because of going into an existing building that we could just essentially start from the ground up and create. Yeah.
So are there going to be like neighborhoods for the different kinds of work that's going to be going on there?
For sure, yes. We will have, so the building, if you're a member of the public, you're not a member of Gradient, you'll be able to come into the building. We have sort of an open sort of lobby, soft seating area. We have what we call an amphitheater, the atrium amphitheater. It's beautiful. So the bottom of this big 5-story atrium, you can sit there and work, and it's like a theater. And then all of our event spaces. If you're a member of the public, you can access that. If you're there for a big event, you can come in, check in with the receptionist. You can go down and hang out there. If you're a member, you have access to all of the building, the elevators, the offices, the conference rooms, all those things. Members of the public do not. The thought behind that was that we wanted to be able to create those neighborhoods within the building. So our mezzanine wing it's actually 3 buildings, but it looks like one big building. But the mezzanine wing, which is a 2-story building, we really intentionally and purposely designed and built that space out to support remote workers. So we think that there will probably, does that mean that remote workers are only going to be there? No, but that space was really intentionally designed for that. If you go up to the top floor of the main building, that was really built in for scaling high growth companies that are in our incubator or accelerator programs, because there's a built-in pitch lounge on that floor, right? If you go down to our second and first floors, We thought about those being more of your resource providers and smaller businesses that need smaller office spaces but want high visibility. So, and then throughout, we've got designated areas for dedicated desks, hot desks, but very neighborhood oriented, very neighborhood feel. So you're not just going to be wandering around. You can work anywhere in the building. That's the beautiful thing. If you're a co-working member, you can work anywhere in that building you want to. And you can book conference rooms anywhere you want to. But there are going to be certain areas that will have certain feels based on the infrastructure and the adjacency of how we've curated those resources in the building. And you'll tell it when you walk through the building.
So you've chosen to do this kind of work in two cities, Tulsa and Birmingham, with very complicated and difficult racial histories. And you've tried to build communities in those. So how has that history informed what you've done and how you've approached these organizations?
I think the biggest piece of it is, for us anyway, is in acknowledging the role that the history has in how you not only engage with the community currently, but how you think about the opportunities and the accessibility and the programs and the resources that we provide. So it's not about coming in and saying, here's what we're going to do for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's, here are the things that we can do to help support and curate and elevate what you are already doing, but doing it in a very intentional way. So, for example, I'm really proud of this, that we, in looking at the landscape in Tulsa and the community, we recognized that there was a gap there was no Spanish language entrepreneurship courses, resources, programming at all. And so we partnered with Tulsa Tech and UMA Tulsa to launch our Hispanic entrepreneurship program, taught entirely in Spanish. All the materials are in Spanish. We have bilingual staff at 36. We have Spanish co-working days. So we do a lot of that in a very intentional way to say, how do we elevate and support and create awareness of the resources so that people feel comfortable accessing those resources. We do the same thing. So we work very closely with organizations like Black Tech Street and Tyrants, who's doing a phenomenal job. And we work with the Greenwood Chamber, and just looking at how do we engage in a way that is not heavy-handed, but that comes in and says, how can what we bring to the table be used to support the work you're doing already? And I always think that the biggest thing you can do is make sure people feel welcomed and that they have access to the resources you're providing, that the access to those resources is not for one group or excluded for just this certain subset of the community, but that it is for the community as a whole. And we're really intentional about that. And I'm proud of the fact that over the last 5 years that I've been here, we've worked really hard on our programming and our outreach and our partnerships. In our most recently on we survey our members, almost half were underrepresented individuals, our members, and a little under 40%, almost 40% were female. And that's, again, it doesn't just happen organically. You have to be intentional with it. But I think it's a mistake to come in and say, I know the solution, we know the solution, let us tell you how to do it. You can't do that. You have to come in and really say, listen, acknowledge the history and the role the history plays, and then say, let us make our resources available and let's do everything we can to make sure that accessibility is there so that we can support and elevate and uplift the work and the people in the community that are already here and building. That was it for me. And I'll say, as a non-Tulsan, I was also not from Birmingham, but as a non-Tulsan coming in, the worst thing I think that I could have done or that we could have done was to come in and say, oh, we know how to do this. We're going to solve this. We're going to do this for you. No one's going to be helped by that, right? And I think recognizing that and being authentic and that we are here to elevate and support, and we want to make sure that everyone has access to the resources and the programs and the opportunity. I'm a big believer in the opportunity that entrepreneurship brings. And it is no one has the corner on the market on good ideas. Everyone, opportunity and ideas are equal and equally distributed. I think access to the resources historically has not always been equally distributed. And so part of our job is to make sure that there is an understanding and an awareness that those resources are for everyone in the community, and we have to be intentional in communicating that and stating that to make sure that people understand the value of it.
I mean, as you've been talking, I've been thinking about, like, so my podcast production company, before we had access to this studio, I would take my equipment to wherever their offices were or whatever. And I've pretty much recorded a podcast in almost every one of 36 Degrees current buildings, all of which are terrible for sound.
Yes, I would agree.
And I'm excited about the amount of work that was put into, like, white noise and the windows and having an actual podcast studio and a production studio.
And there are no windows in the podcast studio, just so you know.
I'm so excited to see it. Hopefully I get a chance to use it at some point.
We will make sure.
Well, I'm very curious about the part that's open to the public from reading, information about the new building. Like, there's also going to be like a cafe and like a restaurant.
There is, correct. Yes. So that we actually just announced that on Friday. So we've partnered with the team from et al. Here in town.
Oh, nice.
And so they're going to be opening.
Where they were going to go.
They're going to be opening up a new concept. It won't be et al., but it'll be a new concept, and they'll be opening that up. And the goal behind that was almost same with parking. We don't need to be in the restaurant business.
Right. Yeah.
But we also know that there's going to be a need for food.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're going to have 1,500, 2,000 people in and out of that building all day long with events and catering and our members. And I mean, in the Atlas School, I mean, there's just a lot in that community. We wanted something that would not only support our members in the community internally, but that would also be open to the public, that would bring people to that part of downtown, right? And expose them to what was happening there. So that was the goal with the restaurant, cafe, bar. Then there'll be some outdoor seating there as well. And when I say like 36, and I said those areas are open to the public, if you come in and say, oh, I'm just, and you check in and you're there and you sit down on the couch and you think you're just going to work all day and not, your internet's going to work for probably like 10 minutes. And then you're going to have to figure out something because everything goes through our systems. But I mean that it's not, you'll be able to access, if you're there for an event, you're there for a workshop, you see something advertised, I want to learn about entrepreneurship, and I just go over to 36 and I don't know anything about it. I'm going to be able to go in, access the space, access those events, access that kind of programming without having to be a member necessarily. But a lot of the amenities and the access of the building and a lot of the infrastructure will be just for members. Yeah.
Did you specifically choose et al. Because they were kind of like almost like a chef incubator in how they designed their group?
Yes, I will say it was a perfect relationship for us. Did we seek out initially seeking, it's got to be the group from et al.? No.
Mm-hmm.
But we said early on, we partnered with two of the leading restaurateurs in Tulsa that own tons of restaurants in
I think we can
Tulsa.
probably guess who they are.
You probably can. One also owns a coffee company. But we didn't want to run a restaurant, not what we do. But we wanted something that was unique, that was local, and we hoped it would be entrepreneurial in nature, meaning we weren't going to open a Buffalo Wild Wings in our building, right? We wanted it to be something that you could only find in Tulsa at Gradient here, right? And through multiple conversations, we've had a lot of interest from a lot of different people, a lot of different concepts. But when the et al. Team came to us, we thought, wow, this is a really great fit, not only in what they do and their approach to how they do it, but in what the concept was and what it would provide for our members in the community. And, I've told the team multiple times, I mean, that's our job. We're here to support and grow the local ecosystem and support people that are building businesses. And this is a great opportunity to put those words into action and actually demonstrate the mission as well as just talk about the mission. And it'll be just an incredible amenity for us and for all of our members to have that, which means I won't have to pack my lunch every day again for a while. I can, have something right there, breakfast and lunch, which will be nice.
So in the design of this new space, so you're combining 3 different spaces into one space. Like when it opens, I guess I imagine someone's run the numbers, like, how much room for growth is there in the new space? Like, how much of it is already going to be filled when you open?
Yeah, great question. So I'll tell you right now, across the 3 locations that 36 has operated, so our base camp, Camp 2, and our incubator at City Hall, if you look at all 3 of those locations, the gross square footage is about 70,000 square feet Of that 70,000, about 40,000 is actually usable because of elevators or lobbies or common areas. And like I said, we're going into existing buildings that weren't designed for what we're using them for.
Yeah.
This new building is about 115,000 square feet gross. Usable for us will be about 80, 85. So it will essentially double our usable space, and also not just double the usable space, but increase the type of usable space that we have. So currently we're limited. If you've been to all three locations, base camp, there are, I think, 4 conference rooms. And we've got like 3 of those or maybe 4 of those portable phone booths. In Gradient, we're going to have 48 phone booths, not the portable modular ones, built in, hard-walled, designed for that.
Not non-creaky chairs?
Non-creaky chairs. and they all have the they've all got like desks built into them, which is nice. And they won't feel like you're sitting in a hot phone booth, even though you're in a phone booth. And then we've got I think 27 or 26 or 27 conference rooms throughout the building. Yeah. Everything from this will seat our classroom will seat 50, 60 people down to a small huddle room for 4 to 5 people. So not only will our space increase, the kind of space and the right kind of space that supports our members and how they work, that's what we're really excited about too. Our goal was always if we could move in the building about half full, about 50% occupancy, we would be really happy with that. I think based on where we are today, I think we're going to be well above that when we move in, which is great. The response has been, I will say, the response has been phenomenal. It really has been, people have really been excited about it and excited to see it. And I tell people this all the time, but it's true. When we open, this will be one of the largest dedicated like innovation entrepreneurship hubs in America. Nice. And the fact that Tulsa has that is another example of sort of the history of Tulsa punching above its weight, being scrappy and very entrepreneurial as a community. The fact that we've been able to pull together the resources to develop and open one of the largest hubs in America in Tulsa speaks to that, I think. So we're going to have not only the local community looking at this as an example, nationally people are looking at it now and saying, whoa, hey, they're really serious there, aren't they? There's something going on in Tulsa. There really is a thriving community. Look at this thing. Look at this hub. And if anything, if nothing else, it will help to shine a spotlight and continue to elevate Tulsa nationally as a place where they're intentional about entrepreneurship and the importance of entrepreneurship and thinking about the future of work and what remote work and how that will change and how it has changed. That we're putting the resources and the infrastructure and the partnerships and the community together to really showcase that and support that. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm excited about.
So we've talked a lot about, some of the qualitative impacts of your organization. Can you talk about some of the like real quantitative, I'm a numbers guy, some of the numbers behind what the impact your organization has had?
Thank you for asking. Yes, I'm a data person as well.
Yeah.
And that was part of the reason that when I got to Tulsa in 2019, I didn't turn right around and go and do this project because I felt it. I felt that there was demand, that there was people were ready for it and the community needed it. I didn't have the data. Yep. We didn't have the data. And so that's why we opened the incubator. I said, let's open the incubator. Let's just test the hypothesis. Let's validate the thesis and let's see. And within the first 3 months of opening the incubator, we were like 70% full. And today we're 50 companies and it's full and all those things. So that sort of validated the hypothesis. And then every year since I got here, we gather data, we report on that data, and we try to tell the story of what's happening from the ecosystem as a whole. And you can begin to see trends and you begin to see the growth and you begin to see areas of opportunity. And as we've done that over the last 5 years, we've seen a steady increase in not only the number of businesses that we support, we've seen an increase in the number of jobs that they're creating. We've seen an increase every year in the amount of funding that those businesses are getting. And then if you look at all of that combined into an economic impact on the region, we've seen that grow year over year over year. And so in 2023, which is our most recent annual report, we'll put out our 2024 report next spring. But in 2023, we served 445 businesses. Those businesses employed over 3,200 people. Those businesses had sales of $147 million. And they had funding essentially of a little over $77 million. And that was just in 1 year.
Wow.
And so you take that 1 year and you extrapolate the impact of that on the local ecosystem. And we look at everything in our industry. You always want to look at the economic impact on a 5-year rolling perspective, because if a company comes in and says, hey, we just raised $1 million and it's December. Well, the impact of that $1 million doesn't end on December 31st, right? It continues because they hire people, they produce more product, they sell, they grow. And so you want to look at that 5-year rolling impact to see the trends and where you're going as a community. So in 2023, if you looked at the 2019 to 2023, those 5 years, the economic impact was over $1 billion.
Wow.
And those are real numbers. I mean, those aren't made up. We take that data that we gather and we aggregate all that data, we pull it all together to tell one collective story to showcase the importance. Because sometimes people, I think, confuse, or they think, well, the real drivers, are really the big companies, and we have, like I said, over 3,500 members. If we tried to tell 3,500 individual stories, it would get lost. It would just be noise. But by aggregating all that data together and telling one large cohesive story about what's happening in the ecosystem, people pay attention and they notice it and they see the trends. And so I'm a data person too, and that was a lot of what drove us to doing Gradient was the traction, the growth in the ecosystem that we've seen over the last 5 years to really help us say, okay, now it is the right time. Tulsa is ready. There's demand. There's need. And we can be intentional about doing it.
Do you all have a date of when this is going to open? And if so, can you break that news here? No,
yes and yes. Yes and yes. We will be opening January 6th.
Wow. All right.
January 6th.
Yeah.
Be closing all of our locations December 13th. That gives us essentially about 2.5 weeks to kind of pack everything that we're taking with us, get into the new building, test everything, and then when everyone comes back from the holiday break on January 6th, they'll come back to work at Gradient. And so we'll open the doors January 6th. We will be there all through that break, getting everything ready. But January 6th is the date that everyone will be able to walk in. It'll be like college. It'll be like a big mass orientation.
That's going to be a crazy day. People are like, where's my office?
I know,
where my office is.
But I will say that these are the things you learn, the lessons you learn when you do this. I learned so many of these lessons doing it in Birmingham, years ago. I've learned lessons in just the last 5 years of how we operate. And even like little small things, like to get into the building, after hours, everyone will have 24/7 access, but all members will. But like after hours access, or to get into your office, I've booked a conference room. I want to get into that conference room. Everything will go through your phone. Oh. So no more keys, which is currently the bane of our existence, because entrepreneurs will say, oh, well, I've hired 3 people. They need to all have keys for my office. Great. And then 2 months later, well, I've let go of 2 of those people. And did you get the keys back? No, I didn't get the keys back. Okay, great. Now we got to change keys and we figure all that out, right? Then I am the world's worst conference room squatter. I will squat in conference rooms all day long, and it's not fair. And we shouldn't do it. I'm guilty of it. I do it myself. In our new building, the conference rooms, if you book a conference room, you'll be able to get into it with your phone. If you didn't book a conference room, you can't squat in it because you can't get access to the room. So just thinking about those sorts of things to make sure that we're supporting members, but we're being efficient in how we do it. But that first week in January, it'll be like mass orientation. They'll be like, college, first week of college, everybody coming in, moving in.
I know, I'm picturing
where are
like
the bathrooms,
lay
of the land, where's the conference rooms, It's going to be so much fun though. I'm super, super excited about it.
So, I mean, and this will be our last question, and then we'll let you go. In the current base camp, you didn't have an office, right?
That is correct.
As far as I know, it was just the front desk. That was the only sort of 32 degrees north staff area.
We have sort of migrated. When I first started at 36 degrees north, we had an office in the back that was just for the team. So everybody kind of worked out of that office. as demand continued to grow, people were like, hey, I'm a startup company. I need an office for me and my 3 co-founders. I got tired of us saying, well, we don't have one, or we have a waiting list. And I was like, well, then we're here to serve these people. They should use this office. So we're just going to vacate the office. And so then we started just sort of squatting at unoccupied desks whenever we could. So I have had, and our team has had, really sort of these rolling desks. You just sort of, because with 3 locations, I mean, we're bouncing around all the time anyway. Yeah. Thankfully,
you have an office now?
In the new building, our entire staff, we have sort of like a staff bullpen suite. So we'll have a small little huddle room there, a small little break area for our employees, and then we all have offices, which will be great. I'm excited about having an office again, which will be fun, because I love community and I love interacting. But I also need to be able to sit down,
get some work done,
and get some work done, right? And compose an email and have a phone call. And I can hop. And I do now. I hop in phone booths all the time, and I'll still do that. But it's just nice. It's nice to be able to have that. And one thing we're going to have, which I'm really proud of too, is in the new building, we have a lot of just one-person offices, because we've learned that so many remote workers, they want the community, but they also don't want to sit in a phone booth for 6 hours a day on Zoom calls.
Yeah.
But they need some private space, but they don't need a big office, but they don't, you know what I mean? So how do you do that? And so we have all these, like, a ton of these one-person offices that people can just hop into and use, or if they want to book one and it's just theirs, they can do that. But it gives people that flexibility, but including our staff. So we're gonna have offices, which is great. I'm excited about that too.
That's great. And Jesse, I'm gonna make a liar out of you real quick.
Sure.
Because I do want to ask one more question.
Go ahead.
And that is just, so if people want to learn more or become members, how do they go about doing that?
Thank you for asking. You can go to our website, so joingradient.com. That's the easiest way. That'll route you to tours of the building. If you want to go see the building, walk through and pick your space before we open, you can do that. You can learn about the different types of spaces that we have. You can join as a member. If you want to become a member, it routes you through the 36 website now. Everything will switch over formally on January 1st. The website, emails, everything will switch to joingradient.com. 36 Degrees North will go away. But you can go to that website now and find access to sign up for tours and find anything you need to know about the building. But you're going to get a lot more. There will be a lot more amenities for our members in the new space. Currently, you get a co-working membership, and if you want 24/7 access, you have to add this to it, or there's this piece to add on, or if you want this. And at the new space, it's just going to be, if you're a member, you get 24/7 access. And instead of having access currently, like if you're at the incubator, if you're at base camp and you want to book a room at the incubator, you can't, because it's again part of that whole, like, all these different places. We're going to have a 115,000 square foot building with tons of spaces, tons of soft seating, tons of conference rooms, phone booths. You'll have access to all of it as a member, as a co-working member. So that's great. We're offering too, like, we've got social memberships for people that just want to be able to come to events, but don't really want to come and don't need a place to work necessarily, or may not need a desk, but just want to come to the events and the programming and come to community lunch and those things. We offer those types of memberships too. So we're trying to be very thoughtful about how people can engage with us, and we want to be thoughtful about how we engage with our community as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm very excited. I didn't realize it was opening that quickly, so that's very cool. Thank you so much for joining us today. This was great. And I guess, like, normally we ask guests on our show, like, how the community can help, but really in this case, the one thing they could do, if they need working space, to do that, but just to show up when the building opens.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, first of all, let me say thank you guys for having me. I appreciate the opportunity, and I love what you're doing. I love being able to talk about what's happening, and I'm really excited about what's happening. And yes, for anyone in the community, I would say just come down. Get engaged, get involved. Even if you're a member or not, come down, come to a workshop, come to a session, an educational session, learn something about entrepreneurship, or just come to an event. Maybe it has nothing to do with entrepreneurship. Maybe it's something about technology, or something about marketing, or something about producing a podcast. Whatever it is, just come down, get involved, get engaged, because the community is there and it's thriving and it's growing. And I think there's so many different ways to get involved with it. Tons of events all the time. Just come. The only way you're going to know it is to come down and just be engaged and get engaged with the community. And it's open to everyone. Everyone's welcome. And we will now have the capacity to actually house everyone when they come down and give them a place, which has been a little bit of a challenge for us before. So thank you for the opportunity to be here and talk about it. And I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for listening to our episode with Devon. Please make sure to check out their new space when it opens in January. We're very excited to see it, and I imagine most of Tulsa is as well. I'm excited to see that open area that they took out of the old building. Sounds really cool. I'm excited to check it out. So you should too. Pod for Good is on all the social media places, technically. We are on Facebook. We are on Instagram. We are technically still on Twitter, even though I don't post anything there. And hopefully, Bluesky. I say that every time, but we're going to get there because I like it. It's a fun place over there. Of course, please subscribe and leave a review if you can. As always, Tulsa, get it done. Everyone else, be kind to one another. Peace.